dynasty. And during the time of Ashoka, one of the most important events of his life was fighting the war with Kalinga. Why the Kalinga War was called as one of the most important events of Ashoka was that during this war there were too much of bloodshed, killing each other. So Ashoka was very disappointed and disturbed by the bloodshed and the killing of soldiers during the war of Kalinga. So he stopped fighting the war. This Kalinga War was the turning point of Ashoka. Turning point, which means he turned towards Buddhism, which he helped in spreading Buddhism and its message of not to fight war across the Indian subcontinent. Okay. So after the end of the Mauryan dynasty, there were another dynasty which were called as the Guptas, and this Gupta became under control. Their dynasty became into power and they gained control over the Magadha, and they started ruling over parts of India in the 4th and the 5th centuries CE. During their period, this Gupta Empire, they did a great development in the field of learning, which are literature, science, arts, astronomy, engineering, and mathematics during this period. And those subjects which we are learning now were mostly developed during this period. The decimal system and the concept of zero, which we use in mathematics, isn't it? This was also invented during this period. And those periods, Kalidas and Aryabhata were two famous scholars at this time. So, based on the great development and great advancements of those learning and practice, this Gupta period were also called the golden age of our Indian history. That is about the ancient period. Next, we will move to the medieval period. This medieval period roughly started around 700 CE and 1750 CE, which were known as the medieval period in India. During this medieval period, lots of dynasties started ruling all over the India. Here it is clearly written, the Delhi Sultanate. Around the 11th century CE, Mahmud of Ghazni in Central Asia invaded India. During the time of 11th century, there was a man called Mahmud of Ghazni. He came from Central Asia to India and settled here. Another ruler who was known as Muhammad Khori also came to invade India. Let's learn why this ruler they came from Central Asia to rule over the India. This ruler they came to India because they were attracted by the rich and wealth of India. Okay. And during the or after the decline of this Delhi Sultanate, small kingdoms came into power in the northern part of India. And this Taj Mahal, this was built by Shah Jahan in the memory of his wife Mumtaz Mahal. So now you have come to know who have built Taj Mahal, right? And why it was built. It was built by who? Shah Jahan. Why it was built? It was built in the memory of his wife Mumtaz Mahal. Okay. This Mughal dynasty started by the coming of Babur to India and established the Mughal Empire. And after him, his son Humayun took the Mughal dynasty. And in the year 1556 CE, Akbar, he was the son of Humayun. Akbar took over the throne and became the emperor, a king. And during their period, Akbar was known as the greatest ruler of the Mughal dynasty. And after the end of the Mughal dynasty in the 18th century, The small kingdoms like the Rajputs, Sikhs, and the Marathas came into power and formed small regional kingdoms. And by that time, the modern period started. So, the modern period in India started around 1750 CE. During this period, during this modern period, many traders, some foreigners, outside people from Europe continent, they started coming to India to rule over our country. Okay, so these small kingdoms, they did not allow those foreigners, those outsiders to come to India and to rule over them. So they reject and decline those European traders. So these European countries such as the French, Portuguese, British, Danish and Dutch, since they were not allowed to come into India, they fought against themselves, they fought among themselves. And the reason why they fought against themselves is that all of them, they wanted to take over the country of India. So they started fighting each other to take the power. Soon, the Britishers, they have won those wars, which they got victory and came into India. And after coming to India, they started interfering in every administration and politics of India. And finally, these British, they started spreading their power all over our country, India. And after the spread of British power all over India, our Indian people, they lived under the British rule. So in 1857, the people of India, they started to fight against the British rule. And this war, which was called as revolt, was known as the Revolt of 1857. But this revolt was crushed by the Britishers, which means the power of British could not take back by our India people. Later on, the Indian people, they formed the Indian National Congress, which was a political organization. It was formed in the year 1885. This was formed by some famous leaders of India to get independent from British rule. And one of the most important persons of our India country who had struggled a lot for India to get freedom from the Britishers was known as Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, that is why he was called as the father of the nation. In order to get independence from Britishers, Mahatma Gandhi used non-violent methods like satyagraha, and finally our country got freedom from British rule on August 15, 1947. That is why we celebrate 15 August as our Independence Day. So that is all about those three periods of our history.